Thank you very much.
Hello everybody, welcome to the 93rd IEP Live Learn Lunch. I'm really excited to be joined today by Christine and Kev from Learning Curve Group, who are going to be taking us through their presentation or their webinar on coaching conversations. So there's lots for us to look at, and so I'm going to hand you straight over, but while they're just setting up or sharing their presentation, I'm going to say it is an interactive session today. We have got some polls. We also want you to be sharing your thoughts and comments all the time during chat, so do make sure that you're getting involved in today's session. So over to you, Christine and Kev.
Hi everyone. Thank you for
very much.
joining us. I really appreciate you giving us your time. I'm Christine, and I'm the head of quality for Learning Curve Group, and I'd just give Kev the opportunity to introduce yourself.
Okay, yeah, my name's Kevin Roberts. I'm a IQA at Learning Curve Group, as well as the tutors development coach. So I spend a lot of time working with the tutors and action plans and moving them on in their delivery. So I've just checked, Christine, I've shared the screen there. Can everybody see that? Is it loaded up?
Yep.
Yes, we can see you, yeah.
Brilliant. Okay then.
So Kev has kindly volunteered to be the gatekeeper of clicking the slide and transitions forward. So Kev, if you could just move it one more forward for me, that would be great.
Yeah.
So we're going to have a look at the intention of the session. So it's to recognize and explore the importance of coaching conversations that we have with our learners, and appreciate the impact that the coaching conversations has on the autonomy of the learner in their learning process, and also develop our own coaching skills, you know, as peer delivery team, to enable us to transfer that into our own practice. Kevin and I have a little caveat. We're not here to teach anybody to suck an egg at all. We're here as a fellow peer practitioner, and to share this time together. So Kev, over to you.
Okay, so the first place I want to start, guys, is the actual difference between coaching and mentoring. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you, because as we said, we're not going to teach you to suck eggs. We're going to load up a small poll, which Helen's going to load up for us. You'll see it appear. There's 10 statements, and all I would like you to do, if you've got your text sorts in front of you and your poll loads up, I'd like you to read the statement and select whether you believe that to be coaching, mentoring, or whether you're unsure, and then we can kind of monitor some of these answers coming in. So yeah, if you could just spend a minute or two doing that, that would be great.
Okay, so everybody should be able to see that now. It might take a while for some of those submissions to come in, because there's a few for them to think about. And I must admit, when I was putting this poll on for you, Kev, I was thinking, oh, I'm going to do this really easily. And then I started to go, oh, hang on a second. And it did. There was a couple when I was like, oh, it's tripped me up a little bit there. Because I should easily be able to answer it, but it did take me a little bit of time. So, yeah. So we will start to see those come through in no time, no doubt. If anyone, yeah, sorry, Kev.
Guys, coaching, mentoring, or if you're unsure, feel free to click the unsure option. That's not a problem.
So I can see some answers are coming through for some of those questions now. So some people are getting through. So far I've got someone who's played it a little bit safe and said unsure to all of them, but we're getting more and more coming through.
Waiting to see everybody else's answers first.
Oh, that old
strategy.
trick. Yeah.
It's a good strategy.
Well, as I say, there were some I was a little bit, you know, I thought this would be quite straightforward and I would know. And actually there were some where I was like, actually I would answer unsure there without a little bit more context. But they're coming in thick and fast now. So we've got a few more. We've got 23% of people have answered that for us now.
Brilliant.
So we'll just wait and see if anyone else is going to answer those before we move on. So at the moment, for question 1, which we're looking at, relationship is short term, sometimes time bound and focused on specific development areas and issues. We've got about 50% saying coaching and 38%, it's changing all the time, saying mentoring. So we've got a bit of a split with them already that I can see, which again is always nice to see. So we're up to 44% of people have responded to those now. So we'll give people another, say, 30 seconds, and then we will share those results. As Kev said, don't overthink it too much. If you're unsure, pop in unsure, and you know, we can reflect. So we're up to 60% now. We're all finishing now. So yeah, I'm looking forward to give it about 10 seconds left.
Yeah.
We're at about 75%, and not everyone might want to complete those. So I'll give 10 more seconds, and then we will stop it, and I can share those results and you can talk us through them. It's interesting. I'm interested to see if people are putting sure for the same ones that I did. Okay, so that's I'm going to stop the poll there. So thank you for everyone. That's 80% of people have responded.
Okay, thank you very much. So I think what the first thing that jumps out to me, guys, as I glance down, we haven't got any clear-cut answers. So there is that level of uncertainty, that ambiguity there as I'm glancing down. I'm just seeing if anything changed with the results as I go through. But yeah, we see that mixture straight away. Okay, so yeah, no clear-cut answers. So I suppose the first thing that I'll identify for you guys is a key difference between coaching and mentoring, and it's kind of that specific structure that the coaching has. You know, where you'll have a set time scale, you're booking set meetings, and there'll be specific things to be working on, which will be, you know, brought about through discussion with the person that you are coaching. Whereas the mentoring is a little bit more relaxed, and you check in as and when and find out, okay, how are things going? Let's discuss where we are here. So on that first question, the relationship can be short term, sometimes time bound, and focused on specific development areas and issues. Happy to say that 73% of you looking at it in the right sense there. So kind of what I expected, dealing with, you know, employability professionals who are doing this day to day. But yeah, it's about that specific development area, and short term, we've got an actual time frame on it. And you can see, if we jump straight into the second option, you can see how it's switched up. So an ongoing relationship, it can last for a long period of time. So it leans more towards the mentoring side. So again, great effort, guys. We've picked up on the key themes running through that. The set duration, like we were saying a moment ago, to re-emphasize that point. Look, majority of you got onto that, and it was coaching because it's a set duration. And let's go a little bit lower. Okay, so number 4, the relationship can be a little bit more informal, with meetings taking place as and when some IAG is identified. Now, the fact that the meetings are not specifically dated, and it's not set in stone, it's just as and when, you know, the person that you're the mentee can jump in as and when needed. That means it leans towards the mentoring side. So a small majority managed to hit that one there, but we can see 27% of people were unsure. But yet the fact that it's as and when the meetings can take place. So let's glance a little bit further down, skip over a few. Okay, here's one. The focus of the relationship is on career and personal development. Interesting one there, and I fully expect to get the split there because we haven't put those specific times in, and you know, the set things that we're working on. So no issues with it being split. But yeah, I'm happy with the answers that we've gotten there. Yet the mentoring, because it's you know, it's not specific, it's not targeted as such. And then let's pick one more out. What we got? Let's see. Agenda set in person with the coach/mentor. I purposely put coach/mentor so it didn't give you the answer, you know, but it's set by the person, and the coach or mentor provides the support and the guidance. So again, that's more mentoring. It's not got a specific target. They set what they want to discuss, and they've took it as and when it comes up. What I can do from there, guys, I can actually give you the definitions and confirm all 10 of them, whether they are coaching or mentoring. And we can make that available at the end to send out. Is that okay, Helen, if I send that through to you?
Absolutely fine. Yeah, I can get that sent to everyone.
Okay, then. Okay, so if we just close that poll off, and if I can progress to the next slide, guys, if I can tap in again, pick it up. And we've got our first inspirational quote, if you're doing some coaching. So what we picked out, it's a quote that's put out by a poet and writer, Nancy Willard. And what she says, which we thought was quite nice and quite fitting to what we're doing, is that answers are closed rooms and questions are doors that invite us in. Okay, answers are closed rooms and questions are doors that invite us in. Me and Christine quite like that one because it really brings the focus round to the importance of questioning. Okay, Chris, if you want to pick that up.
Yep, thanks, Kev. And I agree and reiterate that was a really interesting poll result, and it didn't have a clear sort of side to whether it was coaching or mentoring. And I do think that that is something that we are faced with sometimes. You know, are we coaching here on that short term, or are we mentoring on a longer term? So I think that was fair enough. So interesting. So, and we do like our quotes, yes. So around behaviours, let's explore that a little bit. And, you know, your professional practitioners, you'll be very used to understanding that when you're with a learner, be it one-to-one, be it in a group situation, that you are presented with a particular type of behaviour in front of you. And it's about looking at what is underneath the surface of that behaviour. So what do we observe? So Kev, if you could just click through a little bit.
Yeah.
What kind of issues, what kind of historic sort of journeys has that individual been on, whether it be that day, whether it be leading up to them in their life, to display those behaviours in front of you when you're actually trying to coach them in a given qualification, or whether it be a given assignment as an example, or whether it be engaging in an activity. There's various aspects that you will try and engage that learner in your journey. So you know, this is an iceberg. I'm sure a lot of you have seen it, and it's an iceberg around the top of the surface. What we see in the behaviour that's presented to us by a learner is clear. We see it. We might not always understand it, but we see it. What's below the surface are the consideration areas. You know, so rather than us plough ahead with our given agenda of what we want to impart or gain from that learner in any given interaction, what we're trying to do is say, take a breath and observe the behaviour of the learner that's presented in front of you, which I'm sure you're quite used to doing in your practice. And it's, you know, what is it that's underneath that surface? And maybe we need to take that breath and stop as coaches and explore that with the learner before we move on to actually the given task that we have ahead of us. If it's a group situation, and again, I'm sure you're used to doing this, you might take them out of that environment and talk to them on a one-to-one. You might explore it within the classroom if it's appropriate. It depends on what's being displayed. But if your learner has a level of any of those issues going on underneath that either displays them as a strong character, so they're taking over a session, for example, or whether it's something that they strongly believe in, therefore they're quite demonstrative and quite explicit about their views, but are they necessarily appropriate within your classroom setting? It's looking at those aspects and trying to say, okay, what's going on under the surface for this behaviour that's displayed above me? You're walking alongside your learner almost. You're trying to understand that with your learner. And as I say, as professional practitioners, you'll be used to doing this all of the time. But we're also sometimes guilty as professional practitioners, myself included, where we plough ahead with our own agendas for whatever reasons, rather than taking that stopping point and to try and understand what's below the surface for that learner that's displaying the behaviour. So try not to plough ahead if it's a behaviour that you're not used to seeing. And, you know, also bear that in mind if you're asking a learner to change something, whether it be their mindset, whether it be their knowledge, whether it be their skill, you know, as soon as they try something new as human behaviour, you might get an element of resistance. And that resistance can sometimes show in the behaviour of that resistance. So let's now move on, if I can, Kev, and we're going to have a little look about what is our ideal with regards to collaborative learning. So you will see on the screen we have cogs. You will see that those cogs interlink and move, you know, together. But to enable that to happen, you've got the middle cog, which is a central cog to allow the first and the last cogs to work. Without that central cog, you're going to find that difficult. So we want to be collaborative. We want to work together with the learner. We also want the learner to work towards that autonomous point. So anybody who, you know, is comfortable with Maslow's hierarchy, you'll know that at the top of that triangle, we want people to be independent as an individual in society, but also as a learner. And that's ultimately what we're trying to strive towards, including ourselves as practitioners to be independent, autonomous practitioners. So let's just explore the central cog. So we've got responsibility there, and that's ownership. You know, and that's ownership of their own learning, but they don't, you know, learners don't necessarily come to you with this want and need or ability to own their own learning. That comes with our interactions with them, that they gain that level of comfortableness and confidence being the next one. So that's around that personal development. You know, you'll know yourself as practitioners Kev and I certainly do, that you are presented with a wide plethora of different learners at different points in their own lives in levels of confidence. And some of those learners can come to you with very little confidence, and it could be around their own interdependence, self-belief, or it could be around the fact that they don't necessarily have that knowledge yet, and they're a little bit unconfident about gaining the knowledge for various reasons or skill. It could be that they have, and speaking and listening, thinking of functionality, they might have very low confidence in speaking within a group situation, as an example. So you'll know this in your practice day in, day out, you'll have come across this. So these are the important elements that we need to work alongside the learner and coach the learner to get that middle cog connecting to the first and the last. So that brings us on to motivation. Again, you know, you'll have learners who come to you that have been told they have to do a course, and the motivation levels aren't necessarily engaged initially. So it's trying to find that light bulb of connection of why that course is purposeful for that learner. Not necessarily you've been told, you know, just as an example, you know, by a job centre to attend this course. You know, try and tap into that element of why this actual course could benefit that individual. And motivation levels around feedback we give. So as we give feedback, formative and feedback, you know, whilst they're in learning, that development aspect of feedback, where we're giving them the strengths that we recognize in that individual's piece of work or interaction, and then moving them through to have that development conversation where we're transparent about, you know, what they could work on, what we could support them with. And those praising elements of developmental feedback will absolutely impact on their motivation levels as an individual to want to continue to learn and engage. So they're just a couple of examples. With independence, we've touched on, and that's valuing the individual and the value self. You know, we all know that we have an internal language that we all say to ourselves that comes from historic past influences that lead us to that present moment. And it's just trying to, where you hear that internal language come out where it's negative to self, that we coach that individual to actually recognize what they do well and try and change that language with the individual. And you'll do that day in, day out in your interaction. Then you've got the learner learning skills, practical application, knowledge, and positive interdependence, so that they're thinking for themselves in a positive stance and they're becoming internally and externally independent, which leads to your learner autonomy. So that's fundamentally what you're trying to pursue as you're working through this. So let's now explore communication attributes for a coach. And again, these are the attributes that I've no doubt you will have as employability tutors, and you'll all have them at different varying levels. And this just is about exploring this about yourself, reflecting on yourself, and gaining that CPD, that continuous professional development in any areas or aspects where you think, you know, I could do with some assistance in that area. And whether it be gaining that from, you know, any peer, you could do that as a self activity, etc. So some of them that Kev and I have decided upon being the top 4, we didn't really want to saturate the PowerPoint or the conversation. So we thought, okay, very effective questioning is absolutely up there. You know, we need to have that ability to question effectively, to gain from the learner what is needed for them to recognize themselves. But because remember, you're working on that internal language, motivation levels and autonomy, but also so that we're gaining enough information in the right way for us to then work with the learner to move the learner on to the next steps. Active listening, fundamental. You'll miss gems, you'll miss gifts that are spoken to you if you do not actively listen. And again, we're all human, you know, there's times where we're actively listening, there's times when we're not actively listening, because sometimes we're thinking of the next thing, you know, we're thinking of the next question, or we're thinking of, you know, what am I going to have for lunch, for example. You know, we're human, but wherever we can put that in the forefront of our mind into our conscious behaviors as an employability tutor or professional practitioner, try and put yourself consciously into an active listening mode. And then we've got empathy, and empathy is around, you know, that we empathize that that individual is an individual, you know, that one size doesn't fit or suit all, that they have a cognitive process, how they think and how they process thought. They have their own way of doing that, that they have that emotional side to them, remembering the iceberg, what's below the surface, and that we empathize with that fact and we don't plow ahead without addressing that or supporting that or having peer support amongst the learners themselves. And we have a level of compassion. You know, we're compassionate towards whatever that lies underneath the surface or they're struggling with, you know, so we have that level of compassion, but our coaching skills help that learner then to redefine what, you know, what they want and move them forward, which we'll explore a little bit later. What we're trying not to display around empathy is apathy. And that's the opposite, that we have a lack of interest and enthusiasm or concern for that learner. We're also that we're non-judgmental, you know, and basically that we don't see something as good or bad. You know, we're not that black and white is the expression, you know, either it's one, it's good, or it's bad. There is that grey area in the middle. So we don't make that right or wrong. You're either right or you're wrong. You know, we try to be non-judgmental around that. And instead of that, we observe it and experience it. You know, we don't need to make a sense of a situation or thoughts or feelings or actions about other people's behavior. We don't have to judge it. We just have to gauge it and try and move that on as best we can through coaching the individual and walking alongside them rather than ahead, above, below them. Kev, if you could move that on and I'll hand it over to yourself.
Yeah, absolutely fine. Well, what I'm going to do with you now, guys, I'm going to implement a little bit of empathy. So I'm going to put another poll up, but it's not going to be 10 questions this time, just the one question, because obviously 10's a bit heavy first thing. And you again see it load up. And I would just like to ask, which types of questioning techniques are most powerful in gaining learner engagement and feedback? So which types of questioning techniques are most powerful in gaining learner engagement and feedback? Now, I do expect a clear response on this one. I think it's fair to say, which we'll discuss at the end.
And we're getting a much quicker one as well with the only one question. So we've already had 60% of people have responded. And it's about 75% at the moment saying open questions, with about 25 saying probing, and absolutely no one has gone with closed. There's a shark.
There's no doubt about what we think then, is there, Helen? Okay.
There isn't a lot of doubt there. Yeah, we're just getting the last couple and we're up to 85% this time. So I'll stop that now. So, and I'll share the results. So yeah, it's ended up 74-26.
Okay, guys, well, we have a clear winner there in terms of the opinions within the group online at the minute. But if you look at it, it's which types of questioning techniques. We can choose more than one. Which types are most powerful in gaining learner engagement and feedback? And the correct answer would have actually been all three, obviously at different times. You know, an open question is obviously a really useful tool to get, you know, a little bit of extra detail, get that information, hand it back over to the person that you're working with to kind of paint the picture and you know, move forward what you're doing. Whereas a closed question is just as valuable, because sometimes you need to get the specific detail. You need to get straight to the point. You need a clear answer of what we're doing. So yeah, I would have expected to have seen some closed in there as well. Obviously, a probing question is when you take it that level further, you probe a little bit deeper. You know, you ask for a justification behind a response, or, you know, some evaluative language or something like that. But I think the key to this, we said which types of questioning techniques, it's actually all three of them. And what you do as the coach is you judge that the situation, you judge where the client, the learner, whoever you're working with, you judge where they are, and you choose the correct approach in terms of your questioning.
And I think what Zoom did there was it asked them for a single answer rather than several. So they went for the one they thought was most powerful. But yeah, I think it's a really good point, isn't it? And Shannon and Anna, yes, you're absolutely right. It asked you to pick for the most powerful, but we could have allowed them all three.
Okay. Well, yeah, again, any of those answers would have been suitable, to be fair, just because you get to make your choice, don't you? But yeah, point taken. Yeah, and just to bear in mind, guys, we move forward. It's about what you choose as the coach going forward with your client. So if we move that through to the purposeful question, which I believe, Chris, you're going to pick up on this one.
I am. Thanks, Kev. So we're just going to explore a few purposeful questions in our session. So Kev, if you can just pop them up, all three, that would be fine. So the first one is, what have you done today? I'm sure you asked that of your learners many times. What did you do last time? And what are you doing next? Now, the reason Kev and I have chosen these 3 specific questions, and they're all open questions. And the reason we've chosen them is because we want to kind of do a little bit of a connection to establishing quickly with a learner. With the first one, what have you done today? Gives you the information from that learner of it understanding their clear objectives and clear aims of what they're actually doing today in the order or sequence of which they learn in their curriculum, their scheme of work. So by asking them that question, you're establishing that quite clearly. What have you done today? You're reconfirming with the learner that they've got that clear understanding. Then you would probably go in with some probe questions and appropriate closed ones if you just need a simple yes or no. So you might say, describe what you've done today. You might probe a little bit more if you feel that you want to, and it's purposeful to glean in the answer to that. But that's a really quick question to ask. Tell me where you're at. Do you understand what you're doing today? What did you do last time? Is a really simple question. And again, I'm sure you use it all the time. But again, it's a quick question to establish. Do they understand where they are in the sequence of what they're learning? Do they understand what happened last time that's led to today? And again, you would start with a few little probing questions around that, depending on what they answered. But it's a quick way of establishing that. The third question being, and what are you doing next? Very powerful question to quickly establish, does the learner understand the sequence of their learning? Do they know what's coming next? Now, you know, again, Kev and I said at the beginning, we're not here to teach you to suck eggs, but you can absolutely, you can hear the language that I'm using here. I'm using sequence of learning. It's also allowing you to say if a learner can recall. This is absolutely akin to the education inspection framework, quality of education, bringing in behaviours and attitudes, personal development aspects, but quality of education. This is absolutely allowing you very quickly, and anybody who observes you or talks to your learners, to establish with the learner directly, what have you done today? What did you do last time? And what are you doing next? It gives them that reassurance that the learner understands an element of their sequence. And if they said, what did you do last time? What may be asked by an observer or by anybody who asks the learner a question, which could be Ofsted, but it might not be, could be, what did you do last time? Okay, so how does that connect to what you're doing now? What's the connection? Why did you need to learn that last time? If the learner can say, oh, well, I needed to learn that because if I didn't learn that, I wouldn't be able to understand this, or I wouldn't be able to do this. That's showing that the learner is understanding their sequence of learning, the order in which they do things and why they do them. I've learned this today because next time I need to be able to demonstrate I can do whatever it is. That again gives reassurance that the learner is understanding the order in which they're learning and that they're doing things. So that they're really 3 powerful questions that I would absolutely, if you haven't already got those in your little toolkit of questioning techniques, I would absolutely give them a go because it will give you some reassurance of what they're doing. Kev, I think it's time for another aspirational quote. So definitely. If you could move to the next slide for me.
And again, we're going with a poet here, a poet and writer, Edward Hickson, and you might be familiar with the poem Try Again, where, you know, if at first you don't succeed, try and try again. Well, what we've done, we've adapted that slightly, guys, and our coaching quote, if at first you don't succeed, try rewording the question. Yeah, try thinking about it, try making it more accessible for the learner, the client, whoever. So yeah, just kind of sticking on that key theme with the importance of question. So if at first you don't succeed, try rewording the question. Always works a treat. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to work through this next slide of information, guys, which is focused on effective communication skills and some of the stuff that Chris has picked up on already. I'm just going to work through these 6 kind of key themes, what I do when I'm sitting dealing with a learner, dealing with a client, and ensuring that my coaching practice is where it needs to be. So you can see number 1 on there is to pay attention, to be present in what's going on. You know, to hold that body language and the eye contact and affirm that you're listening to them. You're actually, you know, keyed in, zoned into what they're saying and giving them the time to speak. If we're doing that, the learner feels listened to, you know, they feel part of the discussion, and they feel that when they're given their information that you're actually going to do something with it. Okay, so the second one is to withhold judgment. Now, we're often unaware of our own prejudices and the way we react to certain information. And you know, a learner may say something that triggers a response that, you know, may be negative to that conversation. So we just have to make sure that we withhold that conversation, we reserve that judgment. We, you know, you have that poker face in effect. You know, don't show surprise or shock. Just allow them to speak, allow them the time, allow them to highlight what their issues are. You know, scratch beneath the surface, see what's going on before you give off any emotion or send them down a particular route. Okay, if we're doing those two things, you can see number 3, we need time to reflect. And this is something, you know, I speak to tutors especially a lot about this, about managing the silence and being comfortable in that silence, being brave enough to not fill in the gap for that person, yeah, to allow them to, you know, explore their own line of inquiry, or just facilitate their thought process, and to get them to consider different things and give them the time to do that and reflect. You know, some people can be quite introverted, some are extroverted, and they respond in different ways. And some people need that little bit more time to come to terms with their own thoughts and work their way towards the reasoning behind certain things, or how they're going to progress to something else. So if we're paying attention, if we're withholding our judgment, if we're managing that silence effectively and allowing them time to reflect, from there, one thing that we want to make sure that we're doing is ensuring that we clarify any information that comes our way. You know, it ties quite well with the judgment side of it, but we've got to confirm that what we're actually being told, we fully understand that and we're on the same page. You know, we want everybody singing from the same hymn sheet, as they say, so you're not trying to support and guide and facilitate with the wrong information. So just to actually clarify that, and then once you have clarified it, summarize it back to your learner or to your client. Make sure it's fully understood. Make sure that you're following that pattern, following the right information, really. Finally, in terms of active listening and dealing with the client, the learner, it's important that we share experiences. So we may highlight different experiences that we've been through, or even share potential solutions. But it's important that we don't become the advice monster as such. We don't tell them what to do. We don't fill that gap in for them. It's really important to remember that our role is, as a coach, it's to empower people. It's about giving them, it's about facilitating them in exploring what those new lines of inquiry are, and how can I, you know, deal with this situation? What targets can I put in place? What things do I need to address, and how can I address them? So that's not for us to be telling people. That's for us to be facilitating and guiding. Yeah. So remember, don't be scared of managing that silence, and be sure not to fill in that gap. So pay attention, withhold judgment, reflect, clarify, summarize, and share. They're the kind of key things for active listening that we'd have. And Chris, I think we're ready for a little inspirational quote from yourself.
Absolutely. So this one is by Michael Bungay Stanier, and he's the writer. He's a writer, but an excellent coaching book that Kevin and I really like is The Coaching Habit, and he's written that. So this quote comes from that. So one of the most compelling things to do after asking the question is to genuinely listen to the answer. So that's what we talked about earlier. It's about being present, being there, and trying to actively listen to that individual who's responding to the question that you've just given them. So we love that one. So let's have a look at a coaching model. If you can move that forward for me, Kev, I'd be really grateful. So there's lots out there, but the one that we want to focus on in this session is the GROW model. And I'm sure all of you, if not most of you, have heard of the GROW model. And this is where we're learning through experience, reflection, insight, and making choices and pursuing those choices. And picking up on what Kev has just said there, you know, this is about us not telling a learner, not giving all solutions, because remember, your cogs, you're trying to get a learner to be autonomous and to have ownership of self. So the GROW model really Kev and I really wanted this one to be showcased because we feel that this ticks those boxes for you. So if you haven't seen it, you are going to have on the next slide a little bit more experience of it. But let me just talk to you about the key principle is you start with the goal, you work towards the reality of the situation, you look at the options, and that will give you I will now do. So I'm going to shut up now and move on to the next slide because Kev's going to share a couple of videos with you around the GROW model.
Being a coach is all about asking good, open questions, and this is where the GROW model comes in. GROW is a simple but effective framework that helps your coachee understand their challenges properly and identify what their next actions should be in order to reach a solution. Let's take a look at how it works. G stands for goals. The first few questions will help your coachee to establish an appropriate objective. For example, what do you want to achieve? What does your goal mean to you? When will you meet your goal? R stands for reality. You should then ask your coachee to think practically about their goal and how it would look in reality using questions like, what support do you need to achieve your goal? What challenges do you expect to encounter? How might you deal with them? O stands for options. Next, ask your coachee to think of 3 or 4 things they could do that might help them reach their goal. Then work with your coachee to evaluate these options by asking questions like, what are the pros and cons of each option? Or what factors will you use to weigh up these options? W stands for will or way forward. Finally, establish how committed your coachee is to the actions they have agreed. To do this, ask the coachee to rate their commitment on a scale of 1 to 10. Explore together what would need to change or happen to get them to a 9 or even a 10. Identify some practical actions, such as blocking out an hour a week to work exclusively towards reaching their goal. Encourage your coachee to imagine how they will feel if they meet their objectives. Visualizing a successful outcome will motivate your coachee even more. So there you have it. By using the GROW model, you can help your coachee stay on track, engage in some genuine self-reflection, and identify relevant and realistic actions that will help them achieve their overall objectives.
Okay, guys, so yeah, just a little introductory video there if you've never seen the GROW model before, just to confirm what Chris was saying and kind of show that process. And I think the next video is quite useful for you to see it in action. So I know we've got 2 quick videos in a row, but yeah, take a moment to watch this one also and watch. Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. Before you show it, can I just share something that's gone in the chat?
Of course.
So Helen has kindly put in the chat, and Sir John Whitmore, who actually, is the writer of the GROW model. Yeah. He has a book, Coaching for Performance in particular, and it is a great read for anybody who wants to develop their GROW skills. So thank you for that, Helen. And Helen's also checking out whether that's available in Audible because a fellow coach has asked that question if it's available in Audible. So Helen is looking into that for us.
Good. Yeah, brilliant. Okay, so I will click on the next link and we'll be able to see Sir John Whitmore's theory and practice, actually being utilised by a coach with a coachee, and see if we can pick out some key points here.
Okay, thank you for taking the time to meet with me. I really needed somebody to bounce some ideas off of. I've just been feeling lately like I'm kind of bored in my job, and I feel really underutilized with the skills that I have. I feel like I could bring a lot more to the table.
So it sounds like your goal here is that you want to feel more challenged.
Yes.
And maybe like your strengths and skills are more fully utilized.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. So what's happening currently that might be getting in the way of that?
Well, I feel like a lot of the responsibilities that I have in my job right now, I mastered a long time ago, and I don't have a whole lot of room in my schedule to do much more than that. yet I would like to try to find some room in my schedule to do some more challenging things.
So it sounds like looking at some support or resources from your manager or within the company to see who might be able to be cross-trained or take some of the more administrative or lower skilled tasks off your desk. Okay.
Right.
Yeah. So have you thought about how you might go about accomplishing that?
I do need to find ways to take on bigger responsibilities, maybe stretch myself a little bit, take on some projects that are more challenging, more interesting to me, and that help me grow and feel like I'm contributing at a higher level. So I need to really be proactive about that, I think.
So it sounds like a conversation with your manager around shifting some of the tasks and also more proactively looking for opportunities.
Right. That's
for
a
you
great way to say it.
To do some more challenging work. Those sound like some good options or good places to start.
Yeah.
Okay. So what could be your next step?
I'm currently having regular one-on-ones with my manager, so I just need to make sure that I am bringing that up on a regular basis, and we kind of come up with a plan, and we stay on track, and we have deadlines and goals for those, for each of those steps, and so that's kind of my plan.
Well, that sounds like a good place to start.
Yeah.
And if you want me to follow up and check in on you, I'm happy to do so. Or if you want to come talk to me and let me know how things are going, I'm here to support you.
Okay, thank you for taking.
Okay, guys. So what you've seen there is the model in action. You know, where you got to see them work through each of the stages. And what I particularly like on that video is how the coach just directs and facilitates as opposed to giving all the solutions. You know, they do highlight good ideas for the next steps and how they need to streamline and bring it in, but they're not saying, you know, this is what you need to do. They're just kind of facilitating it and bringing everything together and guiding the coachee through that process. So that's what I kind of like about it. And I think when you watch somebody, you know, implementing the GROW model, it looks really simple in action. But there is a lot going on there, you know, and like we were saying earlier, the questioning is everything, and having that kind of skill, the skilled practitioner will know when to use different types of questions and how to use those questions. And I suppose what me and Chris have tried to do is to make it as simple as possible with those 3 key questions that we put up there. So that's what we hope to get from this that you can take away. And I'm just going to move us through to the next slide because it's one that.
Before we do, Kev, I totally agree with what you've said. And I also think what you'll have all picked up is that at each point, what the coach has done has repeated back what they have heard in their perception, what they have heard that person say, so that they're both understanding, they're reaffirming what they've heard to take them on to the next stage and use their questioning technique. So I think that's really, really important, so that you do understand. It's not your perception of what that, you know, learner will say in this instance is saying. It's you're reconfirming what you've heard, and then allow that space within that conversation that if you're not necessarily hearing that right, they can actually give you it from a different angle or correct you, in fact, if you're not hearing that right. And that affirms you've actively listened. So I think that's an important part as well. So yeah, Kev, if you could move on to the next slide, that would be fantastic.
Yep.
And before Kev sort of puts the video in action for us, what we chose, sorry, that'll just move forward in a second. What we chose, we had a look at how could we put across the impact, the true impact that you guys have on your learners every day when you're working with your learners. And we chose this particular video that we want to now share with you. And it's to give the impact of your coaching has on that learner. So it's quite emotional. So we will give you that sort of like caveat to it. It can be quite emotional for people. If you have seen it before, it's absolutely worth seeing again. But this lets us all know impact and how important that impact is on that learner. So sit back and enjoy this video.
The first real positive male in my life, and is a teacher called Mr. Pigden, and I thought that this teacher, Mr. Pigden, the words I got from the people was that he died, and I was, you know what I mean, at the time I was like, oh Jesus, gutted, because he was somebody who would sit me down, he would talk to me, when you know, when I had he used to call it the EBGBs, because I would get angry from being like this to full on rage, and he would sit me down and he would talk to me and he explained to me, you know what I mean, how to communicate. I was like a little, like Tarzan or something. So then he took me out of the class. He literally taught me to read and write properly himself. He turned me into a monitor. So I would go around with the school register to come collect the registers up. I would be the milk monitor guy. You know what I mean? I'd take messages to the teachers. And then once he realized I could play football and everything, he started to teach me how to play football and how you have to pass to other people, and why you have to pass to other people, and why you have to communicate nicely, and why you have to give people encouragement. And so, like I say, when I met him in this situation, I'm at Highbury, you know what I mean, I'm doing this thing, it's all emotional stuff, and all of a sudden the teacher that I thought was dead comes from behind me.
Hello, Ian. Long time no see.
Mr. Pigden, you're alive.
I'm alive, he says. How are you doing?
I can't believe that someone said you was dead.
As you see, I'm very patient, and I'm so glad you've done so well with yourself.
And I literally started to cry, like I was like, I don't know, a 5-6-year-old, uncontrollable crying because of how happy I was to see him. And, you know, when I watched it, that is when I realized how much of an effect that man had on my life, and how important it is to have a positive male figure in your life.
Okay, I'm sure it pulled on your heartstrings there, guys. It always gets me. And what I particularly like about it is when Ian first sees his former school teacher, he removes his hat. You know, that sign of respect that's still there, even though he hasn't seen him for so long. His hat comes straight off. You know, he recognizes that this guy was so important to what he's become, where he's going in life. And not that he was a football coach or anything like that, just the values that he taught him, and listening to him and giving him something positive to do, and creating that work ethic, and you know, those skills that he needed to get through life, really. So yeah, really enjoy that video, and we use that one quite a bit, don't we, Chris?
Yeah, we do, because it's so impactful, and it's real. Which is why we absolutely love it. And just to sort of add to what Kev's already said, you know, at that moment where Ian is describing himself as a kid, and he's saying, you know, he's a bit of a bad lad, and you know, he said, you know, I used to get the heebie-jeebies, and then I would misbehave, and when I got the heebie-jeebies, this particular, you know, teacher identified that. So if you remember your iceberg, he was seeing a particular behavior in front of his eyes, and he recognized quickly something's going on under the surface for this child. And he took him out of the class to find out what that was about, which is what we've been talking about in this session. You know, he used his natural coaching abilities to take him to one side and to remove him from, you know, the theatre and the drama of what was going on in the session. And recognized there was something deeper. And as he said, he talked to him, you know, he listened to him. And what had gone before for Ian, who's to know the detail, but, you know, if you read anything about his autobiography, etc., there was some issues went on in his younger life. And then he gave him responsibilities. So he gave him a sense of belief. He gave him a sense of responsibility. And then Ian started developing that. He gave him almost a bit of a self-worth. And you do this day in, day out with your learners, you will do this. And that developed his personal development, and it motivated him. But then he explained a crucial thing, which we do have a responsibility around as educators, is getting the learner to understand why. Why is that important? Why do you need to know that? Why do you need to know that before you can do that? Why is that behavior important, etc.? The why is actually a very crucial part of what we impart with our learners. And, you know, that's a beautiful, beautiful video. And Kev's right, we use it a lot, but we use it a lot, not because we haven't got other stuff. It's just really impactful.
I mean, it shows Maslow in full effect as well, doesn't it? You know, he's taking care of all these basic needs that people have got to have to allow him to self-actualize, to allow him to meet his potential, you know, which is what we do.
I've got it. So Shannon's just put in the chat and shared with us. Thank you, Shannon. I did the same with one of my learners who has ADHD. I gave him some responsibility to help me in the class, and it worked well. So, you know, thanks for sharing that, Shannon. So it is absolutely, you know, it works. It does work, you know, when it's facilitated really well by the tutor. But first of all, you've got to remember that iceberg. What are you seeing and why is that happening? So if we move on to just to do the crescendo really of the session together, and to look at, Kev, if we can go back to the intention of the session. So what Kev and I tried to share with you guys over the last time, thanks Jefferson. Jefferson's just saying goodbye. To recognize and explore the importance of coaching conversations, and to appreciate the impact of that coaching has on the actual autonomy of a learner, how impactful you can be in their learning, and also to develop your own coaching skills and enable you to transfer that within your practice. So hopefully we've been able to do that within the session, and that you've enjoyed this, you know, short time with us. We've certainly enjoyed it. I'm sure Kev will reiterate that. You know, we enjoyed developing it, putting it forward. So thank you for that.
So yeah, I mean, what we've got there, that was just a small snapshot, guys. And as Chris has just revisited the intentions, hopefully that's what he's got from it. We do obviously deal with, you know, lots of learners nationwide. You know, it's important that we highlight, this is the first time that I've had access to the IEP. It's important that we highlight things that we do in terms of our flexible learner packages, our workplace programs, our apprenticeships, our associate teaching vacancies. So, you know, if that's something that you can see maybe adding to your, you know, your bag of tricks when you're speaking to people, or getting in touch with us and seeing if there's any more partnership that can be done, please feel free to do that. You can get me or Christine. We'll obviously leave our links through Helen and stuff to make contact. But other than that, I know that the chat's been ticking over. I've not got the chat open at the minute. I've got a couple of things on the go here, so I don't know. Is there any questions that were posted in the chat, Helen, that we can?
We have been asked. If we're going to be sharing the slides at the end of the session. We don't send the slides out, but we can send out PDF versions of the slides, and we can send the links to the YouTube videos. And of course, everyone, this video will be shared via the YouTube channel later. So please come over. And for those, I've seen lots of new faces, new names rather than faces today. Do go over to our YouTube channel. It's the Institute of Employability Professionals, and you hit subscribe, and we put all of our webinars on there. This has been a great one. Thank you, Christine and Kev. So yeah, we will do that. We will get those out to you. There's lots of people saying thank you for a great session. They've really enjoyed it. Someone has put, and it's scrolled up, I need to find now so I can see the list. Miriam said, thank you for a great session. Plus, I now have one more book to add to my reading list. I really would recommend the John Whitmore book. It's really easy to understand. As you mentioned, he developed the GROW model. It talks in sporting language and how it was developed, and it really breaks it down nicely. I mean, he's knighted, so he's got to know what he's doing with this stuff now. So yeah, we can recommend that as well.
I would also just reiterate the recommendation for The Coaching Habit by Michael Bungay Stania, and that'll come in the PDF that's sent. You'll see the name of that person. In fact, I'll put it in the chat now so that you've got it. Actually, I'll put it in the chat.
Okay, wonderful. I was going to say I would pop it in there, but I don't know how to spell his name. So with lots of people, too many to say are saying thank you for such an enjoyable and informative session. And it has been a good one. It's great to see you all here. I will just keep talking long enough to give Christine enough time to pop that into the chat and for everyone to be able to see it. So that's in there now for those who are having a look on the chat for it. Lizelle has also said The Coach's Handbook by Kim Morgan on Audible too. It's not one that's not one that I've listened to or read, so it's one I can have a look. And Anna has said, thank you for a super session. Covies seek to understand before being understood is always a good mantra. So some great suggestions there. So it's been really wonderful to have you all here joining us today. Hopefully you'll join me in saying, Christine and Kev, it's been a wonderful session. Let's hope we can tempt them back to see us again and to run another session for us at some point in the future. Oh, look, Christine's smiling, so you never know.
We absolutely would. We would. No, we would love to do that, wouldn't we? Yeah.
I always do it while I'm still recording during the session to put that extra
just
bit
to
of
have
pressure
evidence.
on yeah, just so I've got it on record that you can't know. It's been wonderful. Thank you very much. I'm going to stop the recording there. And if anyone has any more questions after the event for Christine and Kev, contact the IEP and we will forward those on. So thank you.
Thank you, everyone.